Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Gemma Bradley, and I'm going to be hosting today for our co-writing panel, how to get the best out of co-writing. I'm joined by three lovely people right now on stage. I think what I'll do is I'll let you go across and just introduce yourselves and what you do. So if you want to start, Alex.
Hi guys, pleasure to be here. Thank you to Wide Days for having me. I'm Alex Amor. I'm 25 and I'm an artist myself. I'm from Glasgow, but I've been living in London for the past 4 years. I make dream pop, I would say, alternative pop music, and yeah, I mostly work with producers and do some co-writing, and I love songwriting. I'm absolutely addicted to it, can't stop. Was thinking of some ideas actually today, so yeah, that's me.
Hi, my name is Leee John, an artist, singer, songwriter, film producer, director. I'm 100 years old, been doing it for 3,000 years. And yeah, I'm here to offer what information I can.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Izzo. I'm the chair of music industry studies at California State University, Northridge in LA. I'm here to give the LA perspective and the legal perspective. I'm a songwriter, but I'm also a lawyer. I teach copyright law, etc. So I'm here to scare everybody into never writing a song again. Anyway, not really.
Yeah, so I think we should just kind of get into, co-writing and I suppose trying to find people to co-write with. How do you even begin to go about establishing that relationship with someone? Leee, we'll go to you first.
Well, when I first started in the industry in 1845, I met a producer.
I'm older than you, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Met a producer and had a piece of music. I liked the music, and I took it home, and I wrote the lyrics and the melody. And luckily, that became a big hit. But it was through my own thoughts, my own ideas. As I graduated on years later, the form of writing with other people changed. Sometimes I'd work with people in the studio. Sometimes I'd work on the guitar. As technology changed, with computers coming in, it became a situation where it could be easier or harder with sampling. The whole DJ culture changed writing completely as well, because then people started doing loops. And, so that was a different period, especially in the early 90s. And then, I still believe in that factor of if you can sit down with a musician and, get some chords together and come out with a melody. But sound has a lot to do with it as well, because you're looking into creating the song, but also the sound of what you want to have as the end product. So then the melody, the title, all of that. So it's everybody has their own innovative way of how they write. And then, of course, we're in the area of Zoom, so you can now internationally write with people, exchange things. Technology, yet again, comes into it and how you write and how you create. But I still believe in that organic factor of being with people and having that groundedness of a one-to-one, because because I'm black doesn't mean I don't want to do rock, doesn't mean I want to do I can do any kind of music, which I have done. So it shows that it's about organicness. It's about creating a good, happy medium between 2 or 3 people. There are times when sometimes you do a project, it doesn't work, but at least you've gone through that thought process. You've gone through doing it, and that can only increase, your level of writing.
Really well said there. I suppose from like an LA perspective, then how do artists, I guess, try and build those relationships as well?
Yeah, well, two comments. I want to build on something Leee said, but I also worked for 4 years teaching in Nashville, which is the absolute epicenter of co-writing. There, they would just throw 2 or 3 people into a room that you might have never met before, and your goal is to get a co-write with somebody, maybe who was signed, so maybe you can be signed. So I always thought that was a little strange, just being put in a room with somebody who've never spoken to before and you're expected to write a hit song. But it works. It's country music, so I don't want to comment on that, but it's a simple form of music. But, it's a form, there's a skill to it, obviously. But going on what Leee was saying, I think the best co-writing, I've done some, again, I'm a songwriter, not just a boring lawyer. And I've collaborated in the past, and I write theater music also, so that's a total collaborative process. That organic thing I think is very important, and not just writing the music and lyrics, but just finding someone that you connect with. A lot of people at this conference are in bands, obviously, and I've been in many bands over the years, and my thought is always I'll trade talent and skill for connection. So if I could laugh at the same jokes with someone else that we're writing a song, that goes further with me than if they're a crack jazz pianist or something like that. So I think finding, people that you really can relate to and get on that same wavelength, and from that, the music will come if there's any, creativity in either or both of you.
That's a good point as well. I think it's important to note as well, being in a session and feeling comfortable and feeling safe, being able to kind of, you're nearly laying your soul bare to somebody that you may not have met before, so that's really important as well. What about you? How do you kind of meet people for co-writing? Do you send them a message? Is it an email, or people you've met in person?
Well, I had quite a strange introduction into kind of co-writing. So I think I kind of had a self-induced lockdown in 2017, and I locked myself away for a summer and didn't see any of my friends, and really just wanted to create music, but I didn't necessarily have the skills within myself to produce yet. So I found this app called Vamper, which is like Tinder for musicians, and you can scroll left and right. This is actually real, by the way. So I would match with people from Germany, the US, someone from Mexico, and I started making music with them, and we started making music back and forth. People would send me beats and I would write over it. And it was kind of like my first introduction with creatively working with people. And yeah, I can kind of compare songwriting sometimes with speed dating. Like, you have to go into a room with someone for 8 hours or 4 hours or whatever and figure out if you're compatible, and you kind of have to be open to them and also figure out what you want with a collaborative kind of energy. And then I moved to London after I graduated from university doing textile design, and I was lucky enough to find a manager. So my manager was putting me in certain sessions around London, and I think for me the main thing, it was just being really open to what was ever being created that day, and being open to how they work and figuring out how I wanted to work, the sound I wanted to make. And for me, I found that limitation really breeds creativity, especially with working with other people. You have to really know what you want in order for them to help you figure out what you want as well. Creating that intention, going into writing rooms, bringing references. With my textile design degree, I found out that creating everything is really difficult. If you choose something which is really simple, or a genre or a song reference, and work from there, it can be so much easier creating music that way. So yeah, so I find that limitations really help me with working people. I find that people aren't going to read your mind. Like, they're not going to know what you want. You really have to be good at communication when you're co-writing as well. So yeah, I've been figuring out that as I go, and I'm still working on it.
I think it is one of those things that it is a work in progress. Every songwriting session you go into, it's going to be different. You're in there with a different person. So say, you've met a co-writer, you're in the studio or wherever you are. How quickly are roles established, whether that is, somebody's going to top line or take the lyrics, or how does that work in a writing session for you, Leee?
Oh, it depends, really, because it depends on who you're with. I remember doing my first album, and we did it in 4 weeks, and that's writing everything. doing all the background vocals, spinning them all in, getting the concepts, getting the titles. But it was it's again, organic. It wasn't, we didn't, brain matter, we just wanted to write singles that were going to be hits. And each song I'd write, I think that's a hit, and that was it. And, it's the days of when you had very tight budgets. Record companies are always very cheap, so they don't want to pay. So it was a situation where you were under the pressure of making the best that you can. And I was lucky that I had a co-writer with me who had a good pop instinct as well as knowing the soul and funk feel as well. So we would work quite rhythmic like that. Like years ago when you had writers like Rodgers and Hart and Rodgers and Hammerstein, these teams that would work together for a long time, and we worked together for 3-4 years, and then I'd work with other people. And I found that my writing just grew because I would work with different people and find different strengths. But it wasn't always, we'd write in different situations, not just in the studio or, we wrote a hit record half an hour before the cab came, that kind of situation. That was the truth, because we'd written a whole song, spent all day writing, and I looked at it and hated it. Thought this isn't right, and then in half an hour, it just came, the vibe came. And I think it's about the energy that you put in it, but it's putting trust in the person that you're writing with, and you have to trust the person that you're with in any form. And then once you've taken that, then you can take it to the production stage, and then you can add to that. But in the songs I wrote, I felt there was always a concept, there was always a vision. I always saw a film, I always saw a video in those periods of times. So there was always whether it's abstract. I recently did something with the Gorillas, and yet again, that was kind of very abstract, and we were vibing so well with all these different ideas, but we still had the same thought process that I had 20 years ago in preparing this song.
What about for both of you? Is it similar? Is it different in establishing those sort of rules when you're in a session?
Well, okay, I'm going to segue into the legal stuff just briefly, not to, because that's a big part of co-writing. First of all, I just want to mention that I think, we're all talking about co-writing, but a lot of songwriters just write on their own. But the value of co-writing is that, like Leee, you were saying, someone will come in with an idea or a groove that you would never have thought of yourself, and that all of a sudden brings life into the song. So I think that's the great thing about co-writing, that there's two minds working to one goal, which is great. Now, as far as like the scary stuff, I was talking to Olaf when I was preparing for this, and he said, don't scare people into thinking you're gonna have to sign legal documents when you go into a co-writing session, which, but it is important because, lawyers get a bad rap because, I won't pontificate here too long, don't worry. You get handed a 300-page recording contract or 1,000 pages or a 200-page publishing contract, and you're just like, what is this? Or a mortgage or your car finance, contract. Well, the only reason these things are so long because lawyers, their job is to make sure that we cover as much of the eventualities and future, danger zones as we can. So, when you're in a co-writing session, whether you don't want to chill the vibe, obviously, but there should be at some point some session is, some discussion about, well, I'm writing the lyrics, so are we going to get some kind of percentage split here? Or am I going to get some of the publishing? This is exacerbated in the last 10, 12, 15 years or so with the way songs are written, which is a friend of mine who, also a songwriter, former lawyer, he says there's two types of songwriting: horizontal, which is sort of the traditional music and lyrics, and vertical, which is the way it's done today in a lot of situations, where you're just building tracks, beats, and then, top lines and stuff. And that's where the trouble can come in. So just the rule, if I had a rule from a legal perspective, is that just make sure things are clear, who's doing what, because everybody wants a piece of the publishing, because that's where the money is, eventually. So just, it's a situation by situation. You got to just feel it out with who you're writing with. Say, okay, well, all you did was do one little melody 2 bars here. Do you want to share co-writing? So it's just one of those things that it's a discussion that should be had at some point, not as soon as you start. You don't wave here's my co-writing, Graeme, please guys, please sign this before I even I sit at the piano. Yeah, right. Just don't. But that's what I would say is just to kind of, at some point you have to clear that stuff clear there. Otherwise you'll find yourself in the Procol Harum situation. If you don't know that case, I'll explain it later.
I kind of wanted to continue that point of kind of creating relationships with the people you work with. There is no rule book for creating these relationships in the music industry, who you're going to work with. You could be working with these people for years, and it's establishing these friendships with these people. So if you're going in straight away and giving someone a really small percentage of a song, you're starting out in your career. So my managers always taught me to be really fair with the people I'm working with. If you're going to be really stingy with giving out the publishing, so say they did something and you want to give them 5%, but it's that might piss that person off. So you need to kind of think ahead, think about the longevity of your career and being really fair with the splits at the beginning of your career, because at the end of the day, you might not be making lots of money anyway, so it's being able to have perspective in that. And then I thought I'd talk a little bit about my process with songwriting. So these days, I write my lyrics first, and I think of concepts and ideas, and I have loads of poetry, and then I bring it into sessions. And then I usually work with one producer, but there also tend to be really good songwriters. I find there's this beautiful energy in the room, like Leee said, just one-to-one. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm slightly introverted, but I just really like that deep connection with one person. And I find that I come up with melodies in the room. I'm not very good at multitasking, so I have my lyrics first, and then I come up with the melodies, and then the craft of the song comes afterwards. And then what I really like about co-writing is that someone else will have really, really good ideas that you would have never have thought about. And it's just being able to hold that space of being able to critically think about the song. Is this the best for the song? Because sometimes ego comes into play, and you really need to think about what's best for the song, and is this person's idea better? And it usually is, sometimes it's not, and you have to have that discernment about choosing kind of the best ideas for that moment, but also having that beautiful flow and energy which comes with songwriting.
So just kind of...
Interject?
Yeah, of course.
One thing you mentioned I thought was a very important factor, which I think you could talk about legally, is when you have written a song and then someone samples it and then they want to take a part of the publishing, which can be quite an interesting topic, I think, because that happened to us, which, Mariah Carey did a track of ours, which became a big hit. And before we knew it, there were 4 other writers on one song, but there was 4 other writers in the previous song. So these things do happen when people do sample a track, which I think people should be aware of, that when you are sampling, so you can probably go in a bit more about that.
Yeah, if this were going to 5 o'clock, then I could really talk about sampling. But that's a whole can of worms that, get permission if you're going to sample, first of all. And so you were saying, so when Mariah Carey did your song, someone sampled her song?
No, they sampled our song.
Okay.
They actually re-recorded it.
Okay.
And she re-changed the lyrics, but it was the same melody, everything.
And then all of a sudden you had
same music. So then all of a sudden you had extra writers on it. But
Did you get paid?
Yes.
Well, I guess that's the end of story then. As long as you get paid, that's all I got. No, but it is a thing, since sampling became, an art form in itself. The whole legal permission, publishing, who's written what, who did what, has become such a jungle. And the real challenge is when someone else, like let's say a film producer, is trying to clear a piece of music that has samples in it. Then it becomes like a nightmare for like a music supervisor. So you just have to be clear. If you find your song with 4 other new songwriters on it, that's when you call the lawyers, I guess. You just, you have to advocate for yourself. You say, listen, this song was my song, so why are you on this song? Now, if they added something to it to make it their own in some way, they still need your permission. That's just the way the law works. They still need to ask you, can I use this tune to make something else? And that's what sampling is about. You're using someone else's music to make something new because you're putting it into, 30 seconds into your 2-minute, 3-minute song. So, yeah, it is. You just have to get someone to advocate for you. Doesn't have to be an attorney. It could be your manager. It could be the producer, or whatever. So. Like a good lawyer, I didn't really answer the question. I just kind of talked a lot, so hopefully I said something of use.
No, it is really important though, because when you're in situations like that, especially if you're, you could be a new artist or new to, and that something like that comes along and happens, so you don't know what to do. Who do you call? It's really interesting that. So it's important, like you say, to maybe get a lawyer when things like that happen, or even for newer people in the industry and co-write and stuff like that. You're in a co-write and maybe something happens. You maybe don't like what somebody else has written, or there is ego involved. I know you mentioned ego before. How do you overcome that without it being not aggressive or, but, how do you keep everybody on sweet terms?
Me? Oh,
yeah.
I don't know.
Go for it, yeah.
Well, despite my being an American lawyer, I'm not like a bulldog or a pit bull or anything you want to call it. So I think lawyers, what they should do, like good managers, they should act more as facilitators and just try to talk the situation out. And if there's room for compromise, and depending on where you are in your career or who you're co-writing with. I mean, if you're co-writing with Kanye or Kendrick Lamar or something, and he wants 20% of your song, well, are you going to say no, even though he wrote like maybe 3 notes? I mean, yeah, please, put your name on my song, please, by all means. So, but every situation is different, and you just have to just come to some kind of compromise, and hopefully the other people involved aren't bulldogs themselves, and there's room. There's again what you were saying, Alex. There's probably not a lot of money anyway that in this day and age for in publishing and as artists because of streaming. But just judge the situation and try to balance. Do I really want to? Is this a hill that I want to fight for? With this particular songwriter, this co-writer, or do I just want to let? There's a recent situation with Tom Petty, the late Tom Petty, and Sam Smith. His song "Stay With Me," and which sounded like "Won't Back Down." So there could have been a legal battle between the two parties. Sam Smith said, it does sound like that, so I'm going to just give you part of the song, give you 50 or whatever it was. And that's what you have to do. You just have to kind of take every situation, and don't let your ego get too, because no one's that good, unless you're like Lennon and McCartney or, the few greats or Leee. You could have an ego when you have success, but yeah, you just have to kind of just judge it and say, okay, what's like Alex was saying, what's good for my career at this point? Sharing the publishing or fighting for it? And eventually, you'll look back in 10 years and say, I probably shouldn't have fought for it so hard as I did because there's plenty of money to go around. So.
I was thinking of maybe talking about session etiquette. Is that conflict within co-writing, just how to approach sessions? So my boyfriend is a producer, so he is constantly telling me the perspective from a producer's side and how artists should work with producers. So sometimes he talks about artists turning up really late to sessions or wanting to leave early. Sometimes he talks about artists sometimes not being engaged in the session, so constantly being on their phone and not being present, which can instantly ruin a vibe. And Yeah, I think just going into every single day or being in a session and feeling like this could be my next hit. So I'm going to treat this really seriously. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to be direct, honest, kind of lead with integrity and being able, like, if there is an issue, just bringing it up quickly and not kind of beating around the bush and doing it through managers. My boyfriend had an issue like a couple months ago when a songwriter was going to give him 5% publishing, whether he probably should have been getting like 30 to 50%. And he was kind of gutted by that, and he thought, okay, I'm not going to go through management. I'm just going to speak directly to the songwriter and the artist. And he was able to kind of address the conflicts instantly just by speaking to her and getting onto a level and telling her how he felt about the situation. I think that's really, really important. And yeah, just being able to be not scared about addressing issues as they come up with co-writing and being in sessions, and yeah, just giving your all to every session and making sure you're not wasting anyone's time. A lot of stuff in the music industry, people do things for free, so producers will do sessions for free for you. You end up paying them when a song comes out. So like, just really treating everyone with respect and making sure that everyone's time is super precious and making the most of every minute.
That's a really good point. I think session etiquette is something everybody should, take into account, and when going into sessions, remembering to be respectful and, considerate as well. Leee, have you ever been in a session where there's been a challenge like that you've had to kind of, address there? It could be a bit awkward, or how have you kind of overcame that challenge?
There are always challenges. Yeah. There are always situations like that. I recently had a situation where I had done a deal with another company, and I completely forgot that I'd done the deal with them. And then someone else was saying, "Oh, we want a piece of this," and I didn't dawn on me. I had loads of things going on, and it was too late because the company came back and said, "No, you've already signed this to us, so there's nothing you can do. That's what it is." But you have to get over it, and they have to get over it at the end of the day, because that's it. But I'm a person that's always consistently doing something, so that kind of situation can come through. When you mentioned about being in the studio and things like that, I think normally I would think that people go in because they love what they're doing. And so they should have a professional attitude in how whomever they're working with, from the get-go. Someone being there with a mobile and stuff, then they don't really want to do the session. They're not interested in it. I would think, get out, go home, because there's other people that can come in. You can be replaced. And that is the situation in this industry. There's another one right behind you. And that's the situation. That's another one behind. So you waste time with somebody, they have the option to say, bye, baby. That's it. And I think that because we were in a push-button situation in industry now, everything's so quick, I think what needs to be acknowledged now more is do the research, study more, learn about the history of music, where it came from, the start. It wasn't just based on a sample. There's a history behind where that sample came from and who wrote the song or what have you. There's so much beautiful knowledge of music that and I'm still learning. I'm 3,000 years old, but I'm still learning, and that's the beauty and the love of still being able to do, what we do. Yeah. Loving the music and still discovering the discovery of music, and that's where you can develop yourself as a writer. Don't hold back. Do as much as you can do, experiment, that's what it's all about. We're in a wide canvas, and we can make all these different paintings, pictures, and that's the beauty of doing what we do.
I love that description. That was great. I was visualizing as you were saying.
Just don't copy them too closely, otherwise you'll get me involved. Well, just kind of building just real quickly. I think unfortunately the myth of like the rock and roll recording session kind of overcomes people, because you see like all these things that people like, even the Beatles and Get Back, they're just taking all their sweet time and they're gambling, they're smoking, they're drinking wine and stuff, but they're the Beatles. But you should always look at your songwriting and your recording as a craft and a job. You have inspiration and you're creating stuff, but you have to get in there and get the work done. It's much better to, at the end of 8 hours, to come out with something rather than just say, yeah, man, that was really cool. I had a couple of joints and I'm really, really chill. So let's do this again. No, you gotta get the work done. And the true successful artists that I've worked with and I know are the ones that do that. They don't screw around. I had the pleasure of speaking once with Jordan Sparks, and American Idol or whatever she won, and she said it's a full-time job. She takes every part of her day until she goes to sleep is she approaches it as a job, not just as a rock star or a pop star. So that's what you have to do. You have to really go into the studio and really take it seriously and don't.
Can I add something to what you just said?
Yeah.
That was a really good point. It got me thinking. So I believe that songwriting, you're like a conduit for the whatever you call like the collective consciousness, you're a conduit for it. And you have to, whatever, like that moment, that light bulb moment of inspiration, it's so fleeting. And to be able to capture it in its entirety, you do have to go in, and that's where like the craft comes in. So you get that light bulb moment, but the session is all about capturing it in its best light. So like I wasn't very good at doing that at the start. I thought, maybe the song will come another day, but it's like in that moment you have to really paint it, like all the brush strokes, because at the end of the day, you might not work with that producer again until they're making the song. So you really have to paint that song in its best light and give it your all in those 5 to 8 hours, because that could be the song, and you really just need to try super hard to follow it through and, follow down every single song, and don't kind of half write a song. Make sure every song you're writing goes to the very end. So even if it's not the song, at least you tried. So I just followed one.
Yeah, and I teach songwriting at my uni, and that's sort of what I tell them. You get the inspiration, and that's when the work starts. And don't be afraid to revise and throw things out. Never throw things out. Always keep everything. Never throw anything out. Especially it's easy these days. And just always spend the time. If it takes you 3 hours to come up with that perfect rhyme or that perfect bridge, then take the 3 hours, because that's the craft of it. And I think to me that's the most enjoyable part. I mean, the inspiration is but really sitting down and fine tuning that stuff is really where the beauty is.
And even if you have to go back and do it again or change it, I've written songs where, and I've discovered some of them where it had a completely different chorus. And the verse was the same, the chorus was different. And years later, we've come back and listened to it, and the new chorus became a hit, which is, but you think, why did I use the other chorus, So don't be afraid to change things or come back and re-examine them, that's the situation.
Even Mozart repurposed his music, so just always.
I've done the same. A lot of my songs, like most of it, will be used from that initial session, but I have a song that's coming out at the end of this year. I think I had to rewrite the verse 3 times before I got it right. And I had to preen the chorus, and every time my manager was just like, this is not right yet. And I was like, oh, come on. Surely the second time round, but the third time I got it right. And it's so strange to think, like, if I'd settled for the previous version of the song, it would have been so much worse. I feel like when it's right. Do you think so?
Yeah. And also, just on the other side of that, though, whether you're working with a producer or collaborating with another songwriter or a few songwriters, there is a point where you feel something in your gut that it's got to be this way. So don't ask me to change it again, because, I don't know. I've been in that situation. It's like, no, I know this is right, because I just feel it. And so there is that other sort of subjective, more ethereal kind of approach to that. Once in a while you have to take.
Yeah, I totally agree with what all of you said there. Really, really good points. I kind of want to touch on the moment of you're in a session and you hit a wall you don't know where to go. Both writers are like, we don't know where to go, what happens? Because I've been in a session that's happened and couldn't come up with chorus at all. Wasn't there. I was like, what am I going to do? We need a banging chorus. We went and got Nando's. Don't know if Nando's helped, but came back and it was there. It happened. But is there anything that you use when you're in a session, you've hit that wall, any kind of tools or advice you give to other people to help get over that?
Wow.
Writer's block.
Yeah, that happens with everyone. I had a particular period where I wanted to sing something differently. We had the lyrics there, but just the way I was approaching it wasn't right. So we were clashing because, one of the producers were just not clashing or fighting, but it's like, it's right there, Lee. Why can't you do it? And I just didn't feel it. So what I did, went outside and just like breathed and went for a walk. And that doesn't always cure everything, but it did at midnight if I wanted to go home. But and then I went in and something just sparked, and I just felt, you know what? I'm trying to be too complicated. Let me just simplify it. And sometimes the most simple things are what works. And that's what happened to me. Literally, I was fighting myself internally, trying to be more than I was, and all of a sudden I just flowed out quite fluently. And it became a winner, so,
I think that's a great point. There's one of the most successful songwriters in the world called Ali Tamposi. She's done like a lot of big pop songs, and I heard through the grapevine that she takes a lot of breaks, maybe like 4 or 5 in a session. And she kind of goes away and comes back, and she doesn't take it too seriously. You know these moments where you're just like so frustrated and you just get so viscerally annoyed because you're like, why can't I figure it out? I think that almost gets in the way of your creativity, that frustration and like feeling of like no patience or hopelessness for the song. And I think it's really important to go easy on yourself. Like, no one's creative all the time. If you've got like writer's block, spend a couple weeks or a couple months not writing, because I guarantee it will come back. And the more you're in flow with your own creativity and you can be kind to yourself and go, okay, I don't have it today, it's fine, I'll go do something else and enjoy myself, then it's like you're in flow. So even when you're not like pushing against yourself, you're working with your own creativity, and that looks different for every single person. So making sure you're really kind to yourself when things don't go right. You don't have to say, I'm a bad songwriter. You can go, oh, it just didn't work for me that day. And having that positive relationship with your own creativity and yourself will improve, I think, the writer's block, because you stop viewing it as writer's block. I don't think that exists.
I agree.
Oh.
I agree. Writer's block doesn't exist.
Okay, I thought you were saying it does exist. I was like, oh,
No, it doesn't.
Okay. I also think something that's really helped me with that dirty word is meditation and clearing my mind. That can look different for everyone. It might be going on a run, having another hobby, going kayaking, meditation, painting. It's being able to clear your brain and just letting all the busyness of your mind go, because all creativity comes from space. And that moment of clarity, you kind of need to have space for things to come in, right? So creativity comes from there. So being able to find that space in your life generally will allow for the inspiration to come in.
Yeah, that's, finding that different perspective, whether it's taking a walk, meditating, trying a different style for what you're trying to do. Because at some point, if it's not working, if you're trying to say something like in a bridge and it's just like, I can't do it. Either take a break or just change. The other thing, when I told you I'm supposed to be doing the legal stuff, but I do teach songwriting, so I'll chime in. First day of class, I tell my students, I can't teach you to be a songwriter or teach you to be songwriters. That has to come from here. What I can teach you are the tools that will make you a better songwriter. And the more tools you have, the less chance of writer's block getting in the way. Because if you're stuck on something and you know a little bit more about, like, say, music theory, or some altered chords. I say, well, this is really not this. I'm trying to modulate here, but maybe if I do this, 'cause I remember learning this in like my jazz harmony class or something, that could work. It's like a carpenter. If you hire two carpenters, to get estimates to build a deck, one person shows up with a hammer, a screwdriver, and some rusty nails. Another one shows up with like a big van full of like saws and wheels well, the first one might be a really great deck builder because he's naturally talented. He might be the Bob Dylan of deck, builders, knowing 3 chords, but is completely brilliant. But chances are the person with all the tools is going to build you a really good deck. So knowing tools as a songwriter, I think, is really important to help you get over those humps where like, oh, I'm stuck. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me try this thing that I learned 8 years ago in my,
That's why learning the history is important.
Exactly. So what did like Paul Simon do here? What did like this Cole Porter do here?
Yeah. Always reflect. There's secrets, I think, to all what we do today is from the past, I find.
Oh, absolutely.
So sometimes, as you just said, sometimes listening to something in the past can bring you something right now, influence you.
You can definitely kind of provide that inspiration that you might need in the moment as well. And it makes you feel comfortable too. Sometimes I find even having lyrics there, if it's in your notes or what, something you can look back on and you're like, right, reset, here we go again. But we touched on the mind there a little bit, and I just want to talk about imposter syndrome, or kind of coming into a session where maybe it's somebody really big or you really wanted to work with them, and you get in there and you're like, what do I do? How'd you get over that? How'd you kind of find that confidence again in the session and kind of assure yourself that you're really great at what you do? Come on, let's smash it. How'd you get into that?
Gosh, there's been a few of those, believe me. It's down to each individual how you handle people on a one-to-one. I remember working with a very top producer and who had issues, really bad issues, and we had to get the session had to still work, But you just have to really, I think, slow everything down, in a sense, and try and find your own balance between them and find out what the issues are with that person. And sometimes you have to become their father or mother, whatever, to them, and they get through, and then find a medium, a balance, so that you can get the work going. Because obviously there's issues with each person. Everyone has problems and issues, which you sometimes have to, in a relationship where you are producing something good, as a good art form. So sometimes it's that problem. You have to take them outside and say, look, what's happening? What's the situation? Let's make this work. That's the scenario. And you have to come with a positive light. I think that's a very important issue. You've got to come with a positive light when you're coming into a studio. So if you're working with somebody, plus I think you kind of have to judge the person you're kind of going to work with prior to that. You can't always, but I was in Los Angeles once working with a writer-producer, and I had heard great things and stuff. When I got there, it was the complete opposite. And I had to take him for a walk. And they don't walk in Los Angeles. They take cars.
A literal walk?
You'll die of asphyxiation if you walk in Los Angeles.
Exactly. I took him for a walk just to get so the session would happen. Right. Because he had a lot of issues going on, and in the end we came up with something. So sometimes it works in that way. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you walk away and you think, well, I've learned my lesson on this one. But not everything is right. But because you can't. I'm sure everybody's had that situation. You thought, it's going to be really great, and it didn't happen. You just have to walk away with it as an experience.
I've definitely experienced imposter syndrome, you were saying? Yeah, I had a session, someone cancelled, and I ended up being in a session with Rudimental, and I was kind of freaking out on the way there in the bus, just like, will I come up with anything good? And then your anxiety sets in, you start overthinking, and then I arrived at the session, and then I realized that everyone's just real people, Like, famous people are just normal people, and when you treat everyone as a human and try and get to know them before you start writing, then you kind of start feeling comfortable. And then that's when stuff flows, and it's not about you either. Like, you're there, you're the artist or someone, sometimes you're the co-writer or the top liner, but it's all about the song really. So if you're thinking, I'm just wanting to create the best for this song, then all of a sudden it's not about you anymore and it takes the pressure off. So if you have that mentality going in, whether whoever you're working with and if they're famous or not, it's about the song and it's not about you. And if it turns out bad, it's just that day. And if it turns out really good, then that's great as well, but it's just about the song.
Yeah, I read a book about Stephen Sondheim once, my all-time idol. It was so refreshing and so comforting because here's Stephen Sondheim, and most of you I'm sure know who Stephen Sondheim is, like the genius of theatrical music. And he's talking to whoever was writing the book, interviewing him, and it was all like his process and his hang-ups and where he got stuck and how he tried to couldn't think of the next chord. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm reading this, wow, that's Stephen Sondheim saying that. I don't feel so bad now about my own crappy little things that I write, because it's like, the point is everybody, if you listen to any great songwriter, they'll say the same things. They get hung up on things. So if you find yourself in a situation with someone who's really amazing, well, they're not just amazing just by some stroke of luck. I mean, they have worked at it and they have conflicts and they have issues. And at the end of the day, this is supposed to be fun. So we're talking about craft and work, or craft work, remember them. But, this is music. We're supposed to have fun at the end of the day. And if it's not fun, then walk away and just kind of figure, well, how can we make it fun next time?
I love that.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
Amen.
Become an accountant or become a lawyer. If you don't have fun, become a lawyer.
Or an accountant.
I just quickly want to maybe open it up to you guys on the floor. If you have any questions for our panelists, I'll go with you because you've got your hand up. Let's go for it. Oh, we've got a microphone coming through. I feel like we should have some microphone music.
Cheers. I was probably close enough anyway. But no, it's just kind of opinions, right? So we've just done an EP, poured our heart and soul into it. The team are class. So we can kind of field off each other and just be like, that's shite or that's really good. It's really open, right? Now we're kind of at a point where we're like, do we do what we've done, like a winning formula, or do we just disrupt it? Do we go elsewhere? And we're kind of at a bit of a crossroads where we're like, we want to work with so many people, but we also don't want to disrupt the winning formula. So I don't know what your kind of 3 opinions are about what you would do.
Have to hear it. If it's shite or not, really. That's the thing. No, that's the thing. I mean, it's that, what did you do? What was in the music? What was wrong with it that you felt was bad?
It was absolutely nothing. No, it was actually really good. We kind of were really happy with the end product, right? It's still not been released or anything. But actually, if the next session we might play it, never know. But it was more just the fact that the team. So I come in with the ideas, but we're a songwriting team. It feels really good. It's like a kind of family of what you do. But we are, as people, that's amazing. But should we go elsewhere and try and make it better? It's like that constant kind of exploration, right? So it's not that we don't like it. We actually love it. We love the songs we're producing, even if no one else we're like, this is what we want to do. But there's such a big world out there of people that we're like, we should really be trying to kind of open ourselves up and go and work with other people. And it's just a difficult one because we don't know if we should be investing time with what we've got and what we enjoy, or if we should be opening it up to everybody and saying...
How many songs was it? Was it just one?
No, it was like five or six. We put 5 on the EP, interludes, etc.
Is it your soul that you've got in there? Is it really what you it's what you believe in?
Absolutely.
You got to follow your dream, mate. You got to go where you feel. You don't, it's like if you're just doing it just for 5 songs and then... but you got to follow what you feel is right. It's got to be right for what you want to do as an individual, as an artist, as a team. If it's with a team, then everybody's got to be selling down the same thing. But if you want to go out there and then do something else, then why did you do what you did in the first place?
To be fair, right, because that is exactly the conversation I've had. So we're in a band, right? We're in a band. We're called Dictator, right? And that's exactly what we
Did you say co-dictator or co-director?
No, we're called Dictator.
I just realized co-dictator.
I just realized I'm shouting at you.
Maybe that's not a good situation. If you got a co-dictator in your...
I know. There's an American, there's an English, and I'm shouting in proper Scots here. Apologies, but no. So we're in a band, right? We've written an EP. That piece of art is done. And we're like, cool. So we're talking about our next steps. And we're like, there's a whole big world of people there, like, who are songwriters and so talented. Should we stick with the people we know and like love and want to keep working with? Or do we as a band go, let's go and work with other producers, other songwriters, other people?
I think do what you... I think...
From what you said, I don't think there would be any harm experimenting a little bit. You've got your core group of people, and I think you should be doing that, like continue doing that loads. That if it's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type thing. But then there's that 10%, maybe 20%. If you have that intuition, do you have that gut instinct, like you want to just try writing with a couple other people and seeing what's out there? Do you have that, or?
We just want to keep getting better. We just want to try and do better.
But have other people heard what you've done? Because unless people can hear what you've done, then you can find out from whether you're going on the right path or not. People need to hear what you're doing. Because the thing about it is, it's easy to. I understand what you're saying about, yes, writing with other people and stuff, but if you've done 5 songs together and you feel they're really cool and they're really, you'll never know until you throw it out there for people to know. You've got to fall on your face to make it work. I still believe in, if you're a group and you write your own songs, you do your own thing, keep that core together, keep it together. And then afterwards, once you've seen if it works or not, if it doesn't work, then you go out and write with other people and what have you. Because then you can say, well, we need to do that. Because sometimes you came there as a team and you got something really strong. And it's like, and that's how all these other groups started, Lennon McCartney and everything like that. They believed in what they had as a team, and they went all the way through. But if you start going, boom, boom, then yes, you have access to everything out there, but find your own truth, your own sound. And I think that's what you have to go with. Follow that, and that will tell you whether you need to work with other people. Because otherwise you can sometimes homogenize what you're doing. Find your own sound. So that is what you guys are all about.
Yeah, I totally 1,000% agree. The thing about music is finding your voice. And until you know that you found your voice and you are confident in that and comfortable, then you start working with people because you might not be ready yet.
That's a great point. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
I saw the T sign.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap it up, unfortunately. Sorry, we can get more questions in. We literally have like a minute left. So in the shortest possible answer, for each of you, quick bit of advice for budding songwriters looking to get into co-writing. We'll just go down the line. Alex, you can start.
I mean, probably just to go from the point that you both just made there. I just had a thought. You always think that the answer is outside of yourself generally, but within your craft, it took me 200 songs to figure out what I wanted to say. And I always thought that maybe someone else would have the answer for me, or they could help me write the best song. But it really is you, and the answers are within you. So if you keep developing your craft and keep writing, something amazing is going to happen, and the people who are going to co-write with you, they're only going to help elevate your vision, but to create your own vision, you really do have it within you. So just keep going, and
I have a motto that I say to everyone: if you believe in yourself, others will believe in you.
That's it. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. Again, back to the scary legal stuff. Just at some point, just say, okay, I'll give you 5%, 20%. Let's talk about it. Just have the discussion. It'll be better 20 years or 5 years from now when it's a billion seller and no one's sure who's getting what money. So just don't be afraid to have that discussion in a very friendly way.
Thank you so much for all of the wisdom, guys. And thank you for joining the panel today. A round of applause for incredible panelists. There we go.
Thanks so much.